Okay, we're going to make a start again, everyone.
Thanks everyone for coming back. The next item on the agenda, I'm going to introduce Dr. Keating, our CEO, who's going to come and present to us.
Okay, kia ora everyone. I'm Lachlan, the CEO. I do know many of you. Obviously used to be based here in Christchurch. I'm going to be back in Christchurch out in Rangiora soon. My family being based out there. So good to see some old familiar faces and some familiar friends. So I'm here to talk just about some things we've been doing the past year. Those of you who are here, you will have seen our annual report and our finance report as you came in the room. Those of you at home are joining us online. This is available on our website, and it's also been emailed out to our members just a couple of days ago. If you haven't had time to read it and you've got some questions that you're not able to ask the questions today, please send through any questions at a later date. But you're also welcome to ask questions today if you like. I'm just going to talk through a few points and talk about a few of the stories that are in our annual report. But firstly, I want to acknowledge Oliver, who, as you've just seen earlier, just gave his resignation as president from the executive board. So he spent 9 years, it'll be over 9 years by the time he leaves, and over half that time he will have been president. So those of you who have been on boards and committees, or been president or vice president of boards and committees, you will know that it's a really hard job. It's a lot of hard work, a lot more work than people realise, a lot more work behind the scenes, and it's also a job that you don't get thanked for. So people who are on deaf club boards, deaf club presidents, you all work very, very hard. The other deaf groups out in the community, you all work really, really hard. And those organisations that you work for wouldn't exist without you. So the community should be very grateful for the work that you do on those boards and committees of those organisations. And the same goes for Deaf Aotearoa. Oliver, and indeed all the executive board members that I've worked with over the years, have put an enormous amount of work into this organisation. And most of the work, probably 95% of the work they do, you don't know about. They do it after hours, behind closed doors, in their own time, in their family time. I'm getting nods from Kevin up the back here because Kevin's been there and Kevin's done that, and Kevin knows how hard the work is. Craig's the current president. People, Andrew Smith here, involved in the Invercargill community. So you people know how hard it is to do this work. Me being the CEO, I've seen the work that our presidents have done over the years. So I've worked under 3 presidents. First one was Kelly Bensley, and I saw how hard she worked. It then became Robert Hewison, and again, Robert running his own business, living in Tākaka up the northwest of the South Island, again having a lot of time away from home and working really, really hard behind the scenes. And then for the last 4.5 years or so, it's been Oliver has been our president, and having to work really closely with Oliver and learning from Oliver, I've seen how hard he's worked, and I've seen the sacrifices that he's made for himself and his work and his family. And I think it's really important that all of our leaders in the community are acknowledged for the work that they do. You've seen that we've in the last few years, we've been awarding long-standing service certificates for people who've worked hard in the community for many, many years. And we really want to acknowledge the leaders in our community who are working so hard, not just for Deaf Aotearoa, but for other organisations out in the community doing really good work. But Oliver himself has worked extremely hard, and it's been an honour to work with Oliver, and I hope that in time to come, in due course, that each of you in your own way, you reach out to Oliver and you acknowledge his good work, and that you do so for all the board members on Deaf Aotearoa's board and on your own organisations, because those committees and boards of the sporting groups and the social groups, they wouldn't exist without your committee members and your board members. And I think just take some time to really acknowledge the work that those committee members and board members do, because they give up a huge amount of their own time, and they give up family time, and they give up work time and social time to put on the events and maintain the organisations that you are members of and that you support. So that's just a message I'd put out for you. There's fewer and fewer volunteers in all community organisations and sporting organisations. There's fewer people willing to put their hands up. People have got different commitments. So let's just take time to make sure we acknowledge all the people who work so hard for the different organisations. Okay, just going on to our annual report. Our staff and our board work really hard and do a lot of good work. But like a lot of NGOs and disability service organisations, we don't tell our stories as well as we'd like to. We don't talk about the good news and the good news stories and the outcomes that we achieve. We've taken steps to address that this year. We've started to try to gather more stories and tell more stories. We've engaged a journalist who does a lot of work in the disability sector, a gentleman, young guy from Hamilton called Mike Pullman. Really good guy, really skilled journalist, and he started to tell some stories, and he's also helped us out with writing stories for the annual report. He's been really, really helpful. So there's a number of really important stories in our annual report, and please take time to read that. We're really, really proud of the work that all of our staff and the board do every year. And as we said, a lot of the work that our staff and our board do, no one knows about, because we're a busy organisation, and to be honest, we haven't taken enough time to tell our stories, but we're going to keep telling our stories because a lot of good news, a lot of good stuff's happening out there in the community. And we want to tell your stories. So if there's good work happening in your communities and your organisations, we're happy to share your good news as well. It's not just about sharing our own, we want to share the community's good news. I just want to mention a couple of the stories that are in here. One of our long-standing staff, I think he's actually worked for us a couple of different stints. That's Lee Boulevard, who works up in our Hawke's Bay office. So many of you will know Lee. There's a really nice story in this annual report about the work Lee has done with an elderly gentleman who had an accident, and really, really nice story in there. And Lee does amazing work, as you all would know. Lee also did some really beautiful, sensitive work with a gentleman a couple of years ago who was sadly had terminal illness, and the gentleman asked Lee to help him achieve a few things in his last days, including building and painting his coffin and saying his goodbyes. And Lee worked with him in a really beautiful way and in a really sensitive manner, and did some really, really good work. And our staff do a lot of this work, and yeah, they really they give their all to these people, and they do a lot of good work, and I'm really, really proud of the work that they do. Oliver mentioned Cordia this year. So we're showing the interpreter in full screen. Started off during lockdown with the daily updates. It was really good to see the Deaf Education started using Cordia as well through the lockdown. That was fantastic. I think they use it through to the end of term 2 or the end of term 3. So it's fantastic to see Deaf Education also using Cordia. And certainly we'll be using it more in the future. Moving forward to the election this year. So we had the 3 debates leading into the election on TV1. And that was a massive undertaking financially for Deaf Aotearoa. We didn't get any funding for that. It was a massive undertaking for Deaf Aotearoa to do that, and for the interpreters who are involved. And we had a couple of deaf specialists advising as well to make sure everything was done as well as possible. So we're reaching new audiences, increasing access all the time, and working really hard. So yeah, I hope that you're seeing the improved access. Sometimes it's slower than we like, but please trust us that we're trying to increase access and improve all the time. Our employment survey this year. So when lockdown happened, there was all sorts of negativity, I guess, across the world and across society about lots of people losing their jobs. And those fears were real. And lots of people have lost their jobs. What's really interesting is we've seen our number of people we've placed into work actually increased this year, which is really positive. And we've seen deaf people come to use our service, our employment service, who've never used our service before. We've seen employers who've never come to use our service for the first time. And that's really, really positive. We've had to, through lockdown, we've had to work in new and innovative ways. So our First Signs team, who usually visit people in the home or at family gatherings and community gatherings, had to engage with their First Signs families online. And they made a number of resources. Our First Signs team made over 100 new videos through lockdown to share with individuals and individual families and the community, and worked really hard, and they all learnt a lot through that process and had developed their own skills. I now want to just talk about some of the criticism that our organisation receives. But I firstly want to say that all of our members and our stakeholders and people who use our services, you are absolutely right to complain. We welcome your complaints. We absolutely welcome your feedback, right? We want to improve. If we are not meeting your needs, if we are not meeting your expectations, we want to know. All of our staff and all of our board come to work every day and they do their best every day, and they work really, really hard. And most of the time, they do a good job. But sometimes, like anyone in any job, they don't meet people's expectations. So if our staff or the board or myself, anyone linked with Deaf Aotearoa, if we're not meeting your expectations, we want to know. We welcome your feedback, we welcome your scrutiny, we welcome your criticism. But what I ask is to do so responsibly. I ask you to do so fairly. And what I mean by that is, if you're raising a complaint, please raise your complaint with us. Please don't go on Facebook and let off steam before you've raised it with us. Because what we've seen a number of times is people go on Facebook and they let off steam, and that's not really fair on our staff, because our staff don't have a chance to respond on Facebook. And I have to be honest with you, sometimes when we see negative stuff on Facebook, it's not fully correct. The full story is not told. Okay, so please, we welcome your complaints about anyone linked to the organisation. The board, myself, the staff, you are welcome to complain. You're welcome to give feedback. You're welcome to raise concern. We welcome it. We want to receive it. We want to know where we're not meeting your expectations, and we want to improve, and we want to be the best we can be. But we just ask you to raise your concerns appropriately. Unfortunately, I do need to go into some more detail here. Unfortunately, this year, during lockdown and the COVID situation, some people have decided that the best way to get change is to, instead of coming to Deaf Aotearoa and giving us feedback so we can improve and change, they've decided the best way to get change is to write to the Prime Minister or Minister Sepuloni or Ashley Bloomfield or our funders. Now, so let me just talk through how things happen. So if you raise a complaint with us, we can try to respond straight away, and we will do our absolute best to respond straight away. If there's a gap in services, if we haven't got something quite right, we can try to respond straight away and acknowledge that. If you go to the Prime Minister, we may never hear about your concerns, so there's nothing we can do to improve. If we do hear, we'll hear in a month or two later on. If you go to the Minister, we might hear a few weeks later. If you go to Ashley Bloomfield, 2 weeks later. If you go to our funders, 1 week later, if you're lucky. And by that time, in that period before we hear about your concerns, we've done nothing to improve the situation. So we actually haven't resolved the problem. But if you come to us first, right, we can try to resolve it. If you've raised a complaint with us, and we haven't resolved it, then you've got options where you can take it. You can take it to our funders and so forth. But if you come to us first, give us the opportunity to improve things. Often it's a lack of understanding or a miscommunication on either part. Right, but please give us the opportunity to respond in the first instance, instead of going to the Prime Minister or Ashley Bloomfield or the Minister and so forth, because that doesn't solve the problem. And I have to say, it also, when you go to the Prime Minister or Ashley Bloomfield or Carmel Sepuloni, it actually doesn't damage our reputation. If that's people's aim, if people are aiming to damage our reputation, by going to those people, you're not damaging our reputation. Because when we're asked to respond to these people, we respond, we give the facts, which shows what we've done. Okay, we also gives us an opportunity to talk about all our good work. So please, I don't want to go on too long about this, but please, if you have concerns about the performance of this organisation at any level, please talk to us, because we all work really hard in different ways and we want to do the best. And I think our board and myself and our staff are owed that opportunity to respond and to improve. And we want to be the best we can be. And I just hope you can take from this that the best way for deaf people to get the best services and for you to get what you want from Deaf Aotearoa is talk to us, because our doors are always open. As Shona has said, and Oliver has said, and you all know, it's been a really difficult year. We're hearing of a vaccine for coronavirus being used in the UK. None of us really know what's going to happen next year. We're all very, very hopeful of having a better 2021, and I'm really hopeful of a better 2021. I'm sure all of you in the room and all of you at home are hopeful of having a better 2021. I really hope we can. I hope you have a safe and peaceful break through the Christmas and New period. And I really do wish you all the best for this coming break, and I wish you all the best for next year. And I'm really looking forward to work with all of you next year and beyond. So thank you. Happy to take any questions. Happy to take any questions from the audience or on Zoom. Okay, but as I said, the annual report and the finance report have only. As I said, the annual report and the finance report have only just come out a few days ago, so please take the time to read it. Please get in touch if you have any questions or concerns. Anything you're not clear about, please get in touch. Happy to answer any questions at any time.